Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Now, last time we left off, we finished chapter 12. Now, let's start chapter 13. I read your comments. You were complaining, most of you were complaining about the videos being too long. I hear you. I'm going to try to keep it below 1 hour, but if that's not possible, just make sure you can watch how much of it you want and then leave it off and then come back and watch the rest of it again. Now, chapter 13 deals with basic finance, saving and investment in the financial system, financial institutions, group of institutions in the economy that help match the saving of one person with the investment of another. Basically, we got two types of people in the economy: people who have cash, but they don't know what to do with it. Like, I have some money, but I'm a PhD student. I need to teach. I cannot go open a shop or a restaurant, or I don't know what to do with my money. So I use the financial institutions as an intermediary to take this money to someone who is, let's say, who just recently graduated from college and now wants to go work someplace and start a new business for himself or for herself. That financial institution will act as an intermediary to help me meet that person, and then we can do business together. I can give my money to him. He can use my money to do his business, add value to my money, give me back my money plus some interest, and keep a portion of the value as profits for himself. That's the basic role of financial institutions. Institutions through which savers can directly provide funds to borrowers. Savers are usually people who are not able to be economically active. This could be due to many reasons. For example, people who are wage earners. If you have to go to work for 8 hours every day uh, to work for some other firm or industry, you don't have much time left to start a business of your own. People who are retired. People, for example, my parents, my mom. My dad's actually working, but my mom no longer works. She's a retired high school teacher. She has some money saved. She put her money in the bank. My dad, on the other hand, he's economically active. He's like a retired engineer. He started a business of his own. He got a loan from the bank. So basically, my mom put her money in the bank. The bank gave that money back to my dad as a loan. In a very simple environment, if you have like only two people in the economy, one of them economically active who needs money to buy equipment, material, and investment, the other one economically inactive with savings, these two can meet through financial institutions, financial markets, and financial intermediaries. Financial markets, savers can directly provide funds to borrowers. For example, the bond market or the stock market. The stock market, there are only firms are there. They're selling their own shares. These shares are a claim to partial ownerships of the company, and people can directly purchase those shares. The bond market, a bond is a certificate of indebtedness. For example, let's say bonds, US government bonds. The US government would sell bonds, and these actually selling bonds, bond in itself is a piece of paper. I sell it to you, but what that means is that this paper actually represents how much I owe you when I sell you a bond, like my bonds. So if on the bond is written $1,000, that means I owe you $1,000 now. So now I am responsible to pay you back your money plus the interests. That's a direct transaction between borrowers and savers through financial markets. Now, we also have financial intermediaries like banks. Most important financial intermediaries is a bank. You have your saving account. You put your money that you're not consuming right now in your saving account, and the bank would redirect that money towards someone who has certain investment on mind, wants to borrow get a loan from the bank, and so on. Institutions through which savers can indirectly provide funds to borrowers, banks, mutual funds, institutions that sell shares to the public and use the proceeds to buy portfolios of stocks and bonds. Mutual funds, they use other people's money. They sell shares to the public, their own shares to the public, and use the proceeds to buy portfolios of stocks and bonds. Now, when you hear finance, the first word that comes to mind is the financial crisis of 2008. Financial crisis led to a deep recession in the US and around the world, few unemployment rates. So this is to show you why it's such an important thing, the financial system. When the financial system breaks, what happens is that people who need to borrow money don't have access to that money anymore. And people who have money, they cannot spend that money like reasonably. They cannot enjoy the interests, so they have to spend it on something useless. So these, especially the first part, those who need the money for investment to create jobs, to open businesses, open shops, restaurants, everything. If these people are denied that money, they can no longer create jobs. Now look at the few unemployment rates. As you can see here, France started at below 9%, ended up at above 11%. United States, it was doing pretty well at 4.5%. It ended up, I think, at 2010, the U.S. unemployment rate in the U.S. reached more than 10%. That's a disaster when you think about it. We're talking about real people here, real people with financial responsibilities, people who have to pay for their children's education, people who have to pay their mortgages and everything. So when I lose my job, I'm not able to pay for my kid's education, then my kid will have to leave school, then the teacher who is working in that school cannot get paid, then the teacher will not be able to pay for his or her children's education. And this is a simple example of the domino effect, of this domino effect it will bring to the economy. Elements of financial crisis: large decline in some asset prices. For example, in 2008, housing prices fell by almost 30%. That it's a huge battleground here. Some people say housing prices were fake. It was like a bubble. Some people are saying no, housing prices just fell because people lost interest in them or couldn't afford them anymore. Insolvencies at financial institutions, 2008, banks and other institutions failed when many homeowners stopped paying their mortgages. So the basic idea behind the financial institution insolvencies in 2008 was that there was this big guy on the top. It was like an insurance company that's main purpose was to insure other insurance companies. Some insurance companies, each one of these little insurance companies below it, they also insured the banks. But then these banks, they started to fail. So the insurance companies who were supposed to save them, then they couldn't do it. If the whole idea of insurance is that I give you insurance knowing that you all can't have some disaster happen to you. So, for example, I give you health insurance. This year you get sick, you go to the doctor, I pay for your medical bills. Next year, my other customer gets sick. If all my customers at the same time get sick and go to the doctor, I don't have the money to pay them all at once. I'll go bankrupt. What happened was these tiny insurance companies went bankrupt. Then the big guy on top, who was supposed to insure them all, saw every one of them went bankrupt at the same time. It went bankrupt. Of course, the story is a little bit more cynical than that. You could say they were leveraged too much. That's a different argument. But the basic argument is this: insolvencies at financial institutions, these financial institutions, they failed because people who owed them money, people who were supposed to pay them mortgages, failed to pay them. So when you don't have income, you have to pay interest to to those who save their monies in your banks, and you have to pay your fees, and you have to pay your wages to your employees. They couldn't do it, so they failed. They failed, then the companies who relied on them to get loans failed. Everything, it became a disaster. Decline in confidence in financial institutions. This is another very important effect. It's more psychological. Customers with uninsured deposits began pulling their funds out of financial institutions. When the story started, when the rumors started to spread that that big bank failed, people started to fear, what if other banks fail? What if all my money in that bank gets stuck? It takes me like 10 years to get lawyered up, go to court, and to be able to get a portion of it back. So they all jumped and emptied their accounts. This make the problem much worse. It worsened the problem up to a point it was like a disaster that the government had to intervene and bail these banks out. Elements of financial crisis: credit crunch, borrowers unable to get loans because troubled lenders not confident in borrowers' credit worthiness. People were scared. People could no longer easily trust one another. Having seen financial insurance companies fail, they were like, we're on our own now. This is too scary. So no more making risks. People's tolerance for taking risks fell and fell and fell. Borrowers unable to get loans because troubled lenders not confident in borrowers' creditworthiness. Economic downturn. Failing financial institutions and a fall in investment caused GDP to fall and unemployment to rise. This whole thing, this domino effect, is called the vicious circle. The downturn reduced profits and asset values, which worsened the crisis. So, vicious circle. In economics, it's a very, I don't know where to say, funny or tragic situation. Imagine you're having an argument with someone, and that someone slaps you in the face. Now, your reaction would be to, okay, that person slapped me in the face. Now I will slap myself in the face one more time, one more time. That's how economics work. When there is a crisis, that crisis is like a slap in the face. That crisis creates another crisis, another slap in the face. So, for example, when banks fail over some unknown reason, the factories that rely on these banks to get loans, they fail. Another crisis. When they fail, they have to lay off their workers. Another crisis. When those workers are laid off, they no longer have income. They cannot spend money. So those people who rely on these workers' incomes, for example, housing industries, tourism industry, education sector, all these folks get hurt. Another crisis. When these get hurt, they again won't be able to pay back their loans to their banks. Other banks will get, and this continues and continues and continues until the supposedly the market re-equilibrate itself, or the government intervenes and put a stop on the whole situation, which is the basis of if a really big argument in economics. Should the government be involved when there is a financial crisis, or should the government just stay out of it? Keynesians, who are following the ideas of John Maynard Keynes, they believe that yes, the government has a duty to intervene and save the day. Austrians, who are following the ideas of Friedrich Hayek, they say no, government should not intervene. Government is basically just corrupt. If the government gets involved, it's only going to reward its own friends and allies and forget about the little guy. This is a very big argument. In writing two, we'll have to deal with this. I'll post lots of material on the Moodle so you can watch and get familiar with this argument. Writing two will be how do you think is the best way to put a stop on financial crisis and avoid them happening again. Now, accounting identities, gross domestic product, we saw in chapter 10, total output of the economy. Now, if you remember from chapter 10, we said that the basic idea behind accounting is that your expenditures must always be equal to your income. That's the basis of accounting. Your Y, which is your output, should be equal to your consumption plus your government expenditure plus your net exports plus your investments. That's all your expenditure side. Assume a closed economy. In this case, we are going to assume that the economy doesn't have exports and imports. We use this technique to make it a little easier to do calculations. It's basically the easiest situation is always to assume that the economy is closed. National saving. S is the total income in the economy that remains after paying for consumption and government purchases. So national saving is the saving that I, the citizen, and the government, we together make. So national saving is everything we have produced after we take two types of consumption out of it. My consumption, C, which is the people's consumption, and the government's consumption, G. So Y minus C minus G. That's your national saving. Now, the nation saves some money, and that money just doesn't go like, it's not, you're not going to hide your money under your pillow. You're not going to bury it in a secret cave as a treasure and draw a map for it. No, we're living in 21st century. We have developed financial institutions. So all that money that we have saved goes through the financial institutions, becomes investments. That's the beauty of financial institutions. That's why, if I could say that the reason that the world started to grow out of the dark ages was the introduction of the banking system. Because the banking system changed the whole definition of saving. Saving used to be, okay, you put some money aside, you hide it somewhere, so that when you're sick or in your time of need, you can spend it. But now, saving is that I put some money aside, yes, but that money is not going to just remain the same. That money is going to circulate in the economy and create new value, create new things, lead to trade being organized, lead to new farms being built, lead to new goods being produced. So that money is not going to just remain the same, hidden in a cave or someplace for a treasure hunter to find. That money is going to circulate in the economy and grow in size. Now, for T, taxes minus transfer payments. S equal Y minus C minus G can be rewritten as y minus c minus t plus t minus g. Now, why do we do that? You have this national saving, yes, yes, national saving is equal to all everything that we have produced minus everything that I, the citizen, consume, and everything G, the government, is consuming, or we better say wasting. What remains from these three goes to investment and is called the national savings. Now, if you rewrite this, but now this time deduct t and add t to it, it turns into something else. That's the same in equation, but now you have separated two very important parts. National savings is what I save and what the government saves put together. But now, by separating these two using taxes, we can find what I, the citizen, saves and what the government saves. Private saving is everything that we have produced. In this economy, we assume that the government doesn't own the means of production, doesn't produce anything, so everything that is produced by the people. Now, I have produced something, let's say $1,000 worth of goods and services as a citizen. I paid $100 as taxes, and I consumed $800 on $800. So in total, 1,000 minus 100 minus 800. What remains is $100. Now, what I'm going to do with that $100? I'm going to save that. Where am I going to save that? In the financial institutions. That's my private savings. Now, the government, on the other hand, as this example perfectly shows, the government doesn't produce anything on itself. But the government taxes the people. The source of income for the government is T, taxes. Everything that you and me pay the government as taxes is put together, and that's the source of income for the government. Now, the government has certain expenditures, military, healthcare, education, this coronavirus bailout, all these costs money. All these cost money. So T, all of tax revenues, taxes, minus G. When you take all the expenditures out, there's something left. That is the money that the government saves. That's public saving. Tax revenue that the government has left after paying for its spending. That's called public saving. Now, usually governments don't have public savings. Governments don't, it's very easy when you're spending someone else's money, when you're spending the citizens' taxes, for example, it's very easy to find new ways to spend that money. Because, of course, I'm joking, but think about this. Like, I'm a person, each one of you pay me $10 every day. I wouldn't have any money left at the end of the month. I promise you, I'll find a way to spend that money. So governments usually don't have anything left. When they do, for example, in 1990s, I think in the US, in 1990s, then you have T all the tax revenues put together minus G, all spending up by the government, you have some money left. That is your budget surplus. That is your budget surplus. Excess of tax revenues over government spending equal public saving. But now, more than usual, we see budget deficits, that governments take some money as taxes from the people, spend some money, and they still need some more because they need to spend more. In this situation, governments have budget deficit, shortfall of tax revenues from government spending. So the government, at the end of the day, not only has spent all my tax money, but also needs to borrow some more money to make ends meet. Now, budget surplus and budget deficit, it's a huge argument. Some people actually say budget surplus is wrong. When a government has budget surplus, it means it's not doing enough. You should spend that money for, let's say, poor people to elevate them out of poverty, or better still, reduce taxes. If you're making if you're making enough money that you don't know how to spend it by taxing poor citizens, then reduce taxes. Then don't tax them this much. Of course, budget deficit has also faces serious problems. Most importantly, people say when the government is spending too much money, that it's not even able to acquire through taxes. Well, someone needs to pay that money. Who? Our children and our grandchildren. So basically, we're spending our children's future by consuming too much today. Of course, both these arguments are looking at only one side of the picture. For example, those who are against budget surplus, well, I can tell them that budget surplus is actually good because the government has some money left. You can actually spend it somewhere else, like save it through investments, give it back to people, or to have certain money saved. So if there's a financial crisis, it can protect the country's economy. For budget deficit, people who say budget deficit is us spending our children's future, I can say not really, because our children are going to come up with new ideas, they produce more goods and services, and they will have more money. So now it's better that we spend it to be able to build the schools, roads, factories that the same children can enjoy. It can elevate children out of poverty so that these children who at this point will have no access to education, no access to, let's say, technological growth, will be educated, useful citizens who can actually generate wealth. That's another argument. And these are like not really clear things because there are so many variables. Certain aspects of these budget surplus and budget deficits are very clear that certain actions are wrong. But usually, when we're going through really advanced arguments, it's not really clear. Well, you could say budget deficit can also be tolerable, and you could also say budget surplus is not a bad thing. So the argument is much more advanced than the scope of this class, at least. Now, so this to take you further. Okay. Suppose GDP equals 10 trillion. 10 trillion. Consumption equals 6.5. And G equals 2. Consumption is 6.5. G equals 2. And there was one more variable. And the government has a budget deficit of 300 billion. So what was the definition of government budget deficit? I tax the people, I spend all the taxes, and I still need to borrow something. So that's T minus G equals 300 billion. In this case, we say 0.3 because we're so rich, we're talking trillions now. So we have G here. Let's assume that's how I write it. G, my handwriting is terrible, sorry about that. So your tax is equal 2 trillion and oh, sorry, budget surplus, right? We said budget deficit, a budget deficit. So T minus G is equal minus 0.3. So that's how much I still need to spend. So when you put G to the, when you take G to the other side, that's 2 trillion. All your government expenditures minus the 300 billion. So your tax income is $1.7 trillion. Your government expenditure is 2 trillions. So when you deduct the 2 trillions from 1.7 trillion, you have to still borrow some more money equal to 0.3 to pay the debts. Public savings, net taxes, private saving, national savings, and investment. Now, public savings is, we saw that here, it's this much. Our budget deficit is minus 0.3. Taxes is 1.7. Private saving is C minus T. It's 6.5 minus 1.7, that's 15, that's 4.8. C minus T, private saving. Oh, sorry. I shouldn't make it so confusing. Okay, private savings, let's go back to the definition, is how much I, the person, the citizen, produce minus everything that I spent. So what I have left, I save. I produced 10 trillion here. 6.5 trillions I ate, I consumed. 1.7 I paid to the government. So what I have left is 10 trillion minus 6.5 minus 1.7. That's 7, 12, 8.2. So it should be around $1.8 trillion. Private saving and investment. Of course, national savings is equal to private savings. So we have net taxes here, 1.7, public saving minus this, 1.8 private savings. National savings is, again, what I save plus what the government saves. Of course, the government is not really good at saving, is more good at ruining everything. So what I have saved is 1.8. What the government has saved is actually a negative number. So We put these two together, national saving is 1.5. Investment is always equal to national saving. Investment is what everyone in the economy put together is saving. That's the total investment. Now, this is very important. You'll definitely see a question on the exam about this. Make sure you understand this. Don't try to memorize these formulas. You need to be able to think for yourself and to come up with explanations for it. Why do we call national savings equal to investment? What do we have? Private savings equal to Y minus T minus C. As you can go back to the video and see here, listen to the explanation I provided. For example, private savings, I own the entire parts of the economy. I produce something. That's Y. That's my total production. I as a representative citizen. I pay some of this Y, all of my income, to the government as taxes, and I consume some of it. Whatever I have left at the end of the day is Y minus T minus C. I save that. That's my private savings. Now, use the numbers from the preceding exercise, but suppose now that the government cuts taxes by $200 billion. Let's say a tax cut. Let's take a quick break, come back in 5 minutes.